other projects are coming together, coming to completion, with some progress on them, which is good. I finished some building work on my house. Just got the building control from the local city authority that gave the approval for that just last week. So that was good, you know.
Oh, congratulations.
So yeah, and then of course, having finished one project, you realise all the other projects that you need to start now. So that's that's good.
So what's the next step?
Next step for me, concentrate on these things I'm procrastinating about. Really, I've got. The task that I've broken off just to go onto this call is to I'm redesigning some of the loudspeaker rigs from some of our conventions at different arenas. I've been allocated 3 of the arenas that we do, and another 3 been allocated to someone else.
What locations?
So Glasgow, Newcastle, and Leeds, and they're all arenas, 10,000, 12,000, 8,000 capacity, that sort of thing, and just rearranging the loudspeakers on the truss to make them easier to rig. That's the idea. Because at the designs we've used before, we had low frequency loudspeakers hanging underneath the horns, which meant that as you were rigging the truss, you would you'd have to do it in several lifts. You'd have to put the horns on, and then you lift it up by another sort of 2 or 3 feet. Then you can put more speakers on underneath, and this sort of thing. So what we're doing is investigating the possibility of taking these dangly loudspeakers and just putting them on the truss next to the others.
Okay.
But of course, it's not straightforward in as much as if you put them too close together, then one is in the way of another, and so you've got to be careful of that. One's blocking the coverage pattern of another, and also try and get the weight balanced on the truss as well. So you think, should I hang this on the front of the truss or the back of the truss? Because if you hang everything off the front, then the thing doesn't hang square, and so all of your nice angles vertical angles end up being out. So yeah.
Well, Andrew, my understanding was that you pretty much only used the high frequency drivers because it was only speech, and so that really simplified things. You just had these high frequency drivers that basically cover, 500 hertz and up, or is that not the case?
So that's what the priority is in the modeling with these, because that's obviously for intelligibility. You need your 500 hertz and up in every seat. But we do give low frequency as well, because while for intelligibility 500 hertz and up it would be adequate, and I've seen those horns installed in that way in an emergency announcement system. So, but that's something that people are only listening to, for a minute while they're running out of this burning building or something like that.
Okay.
Whereas we've got a system that people are going to be listening to, for 2 sessions of 3 hours in the day. So you need to have naturalness as well. So we have low frequency loudspeakers as well.
So why do you guys use these boxes that have the drivers separate from them? Why don't you use regular boxes that have, your high frequency and low frequency drivers all in one box?
Well, we have done when that suits, but the problem is that when it's all in one box, the horn can only be as big as the box, and that limits the lower frequency when the horn is effective as regards directivity. So if the mouth of the horn is 1 foot across, that limits the directivity to be about a kilohertz, and anything below a kilohertz, the horn's not going to work. And indeed, if you look at speakers that have one box, you find the crossover is at 1200 hertz or something like that, and of course then your anything below 1200 is on the big bass driver at the bottom, and which is virtually omnidirectional. It's sort of as it goes down. So by having them separate, it allows us to have these horns with a very wide mouth, 2.5 feet, so that you get the controlled directivity down to 500 hertz, which really does help to keep it off the roof or keep it off the walls or whatever.
I see. So you want a really wide high frequency driver, a really wide horn, but then you don't necessarily want your entire box and the other speaker to be that wide.
Exactly, that's right. I mean, it would be absolutely huge. I mean, you think of a box that is, well, I mean, if the horn mouth was 2.5 feet wide, your box would have to be 3 feet wide. And you think, how big and heavy is this going to be? You know.
Well, I'm thinking of the Meyer Sound Asheron. Let's see how big that thing is. Because that high frequency driver goes down to 500 hertz.
Oh, right.
It is 31, are those inches? So 778 millimeters.
Yeah.
How many meters is that? Or 31 inches. So 31 divided by 12. So yeah, that's 2.6 feet.
Yeah.
That's pretty wide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's funny though, because that seems to me more complicated to like separate out the drivers and figure out how to hang those on a truss, because then you have to figure out how to make the crossover, the spectral crossover between the high frequency driver and the low frequency driver line up, right?
Yes, and that was a task I had last week to look at that as well. So yeah, and that is actually a scenario where we deliberately misalign the time alignment. So remember how when we were discussing time alignment, I said that I'd been given this rule of thumb to if you can't get it spot on everywhere, deliberately misalign it by 5 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds or something. And the idea is that, I mean, let's say that you attempted to perfectly align them at your crossover frequency of 500 hertz. And you would perfectly align it for one seat or a line, a sort of a line where the distance is equal between these two loudspeakers. But then you go off, and let's say that you have a path difference of 1 foot. Then actually what that gives you is an enormous, you get the cone filtering and you get an enormous cancellation at 500 hertz, really, really wide. And there's no chance of doing anything with that. Whereas if you increase the time misalignment to maybe 5 milliseconds, then the cone filtering, it starts lower down. So does it start at 100 hertz? I don't know, 200 hertz, something like that, which you don't care about, because that's not going to, the two signals aren't equal down at 100 hertz or 200 hertz. They're only equal in this small region around the crossover.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on there? Well, you've got these narrow notches 100 hertz wide, something like that, instead of this huge big wide notch which you got with just a 1 millisecond misalignment.
Yeah.
And so you and then you can fiddle with the delay and just fine tune it until you get the fullest sounding sound. So you're just moving this comb around a little bit until it's less objectionable for you.
So isn't that the same case with any speaker though? I mean, it's not just your situation with that particular setup. That's the same with any speaker. There's an on-axis point where everything is aligned, and then any direction that you move off from that, they're not aligned.
Well, I mean, what's happening for us is that because our frequency of interest is 500 hertz, then that is way different from phase aligning a sub. So the misalignment times are different. I mean, what I'm planning on doing is doing some documentation for this for our guys. When I've done it, I'll send it through to you, and maybe it will all become clear or unclear or crazy. Okay. I don't know when you see it. Yeah.
Well, but you're describing the same thing that would happen if you bought a Meyer Sound Asheron box here, a cinema speaker, and that's the same thing. It has a spectral crossover between the high frequency driver and the low frequency driver at 500 hertz. And then if you hung that on a truss and flew it, it would be the same situation, right? There would be an on-axis point, and then if you moved off from that, you would have less there would be an area where they wouldn't align as well. But it seems that area would be minimal because the drivers are physically very close to each other. And so if you're also putting them physically very close to each other, I don't know, what has your experience been in the field? Like, how big is the area physically where they are aligned and then not aligned?
I mean, our experience is that most of our teams don't even attempt to address this problem. So they just put the thing in and switch it on and don't bother trying to time align or phase align or anything. And we don't get many complaints. But I think if you went up there with Smart and out in the audience, and you would probably see that there is a dip around the crossover because of not this cancellation not having aligned it right. So.
Or maybe not. Maybe they're somehow. Maybe
just by chance. Yes,
the drivers are just so close and they're in time. I mean, but it also sounds like you're potentially using drivers from different manufacturers that aren't built to go together. So
exactly, and they are not that close together physically either. And with my changing the rigging format, these drivers are going to be 4 feet apart, maybe more. So. So it's it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I mean, even if we make a mess of it, it's only in a narrow frequency band. It's only around the 500 hertz crossover frequency, and that's not the bit that's key for intelligibility. Good for naturalness, but not for intelligibility.
Okay. Hey, Andy. So Andrew and I are just hanging out. I'm waiting to see if anybody's going to get on and have any questions about the next course of Seeing Sound. But if you have anything else you want to talk about, just hanging
out. No, actually, I'm actually really looking forward to this version 2.
All right.
It sucks to do it on Monday because that's like every other Monday I have this regular gig with Solar City, which it's a broadcast gig, and I'm going to see if I can sometimes sneak in there because I have some downtime during that thing. But if not, I'll just have to go back and listen to the recordings.
Another guy, Tim, just told me that's also bad for him because every Monday at 9 a.m. he has a meeting with his team. So I've already heard from people that it's not the best time.
Oh, have you considered maybe changing it?
No, it worked out pretty well with the last one. I think I'm always going to have about, half the people who won't be able to make that time, half the people for whom it is a good time. And, a third of the people are in Europe, so it's in the evening anyway.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
I could, with the first one, or maybe with the one I did a couple years ago, I tried doing a survey to see when the best time would be. So before the course started, I did a survey of everyone. Tell me the times are all over the place. And there was no one time that everyone was the best for everyone. So I just had to pick one.
Yeah, that's what happens when you teach an international course. Anyway,
I'll tell you what though, I'll do another poll, and if I get a pretty high number of people who are saying that Monday at 9 is not the best time, then I'll change it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want people to be able to come, but I also realize that it's hard to predict, and most people's schedules, I think. Well, that's not true. I'm thinking that most people's schedules are changing every week anyway. And so it's hard for them to predict. But I would like to try and get as many people to attend as possible.
Okay. Andrew over there I don't think he saw this on the postings that you and I had going back and forth, communicating about prep work. Like I admit it, mathematically challenged. I was happy to hear you admitted that to me at one point, and that you were able to overcome that. So I know there's hope for me. But yeah, I think in the last class, there was so much good information, and then what would happen is sometimes I'd get a little behind because, crap, I didn't learn all the features of map, for example, and I know you're addressing that this round, and that's going to be great. And then along with that, I wanted to ask you, because I am going to reinvest in an analyzer program.
Okay.
I had used Smart for a few years on and off when I had time to set it up. I want to relearn a program like that because I never got formal training in it. I'd watch other people use it, but that wasn't enough. And that's one of the reasons why I like your class. You do get into the weeds with, how to look at the results and other things. So I think it would be important for me to reevaluate what tools I should be using there. Obviously Smart is one option. I have a Mac. I just kind of rebuilt this Mac, and I think I'm going to rebuild it again so that I can actually boot camp.
I need to keep rebuilding it until you can finally use it.
Well, no, what it is that I got kind of desperate because I'm like, oh crap, a couple of programs I wanted to use were beyond the operating system. So I said, okay, I'll just throw the new operating system on it and see how it performs and all that. It's been fine so far. I'm even amazed I can still use Pro Tools version 9 on it. I thought I was past that. Anyway, so I'm not. It doesn't have to be a Mac-centric program. It could be a PC program too. If I'm going to put Boot Camp back on the other side, on a different partition on this drive. Because it was good to see you using Sat Live on the show we just did, because it really seems like a very powerful program.
It is powerful. I've used both Smart and Sat Live, and to me, I can't really tell that there's one great advantage over the other. I think they both have a handful of features that maybe one doesn't have, but they're both analyzers. At their core are just really simple, just data delivery systems. They're simple to learn. They're simple to use. So I think which one you pick is not really that big of a difference in terms of getting the job done. I think the main things that actually affect how useful they are things that, like, for example, it's kind of a hassle that I have to restart my computer and switch over to Windows when I want to use Sat Live. Like, inherently, that's kind of a problem. At the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal, but like, it would be nice. If I had to go back and do it again, like, I might have picked Smart, but I've already learned Sat Live, so I'm not going to switch at this point. Like, I'm fairly interested in it. And the other thing is price is a concern. And the last thing is education. So there's a lot of education surrounding Smart. A lot of people know how to use it. There's these online forums. There's like live trainings that you can go to. Sat Live has a little bit smaller user base. There's like a Facebook group. He does occasional online trainings, but there's nothing like live that you could go to. I don't know. Maybe we should, if other people start using Sat Live, maybe we should start doing some live trainings here in the US. But so those I think those differences are actually more important than the features of the software itself, which are really similar and are just like, people get kind of caught up in it and like kind of excited and like, oh, how do I use Smart? But it's a simple thing. It delivers this information. The hard thing is really like, it's these ugly squiggly lines. Like, what do we do with this?
No, absolutely. And just to finish, because I have been going back and forth, but I have, there's obviously advantages to sticking with Smart if you're a Mac user. And now Smart has, I'm trying to remember the name of it. They're a light version. I think it's called Smart BI, if I'm not mistaken. It has less features than the full Smart. It's about $300 less, if I remember. Here, I'm going to see if I can find it too. And I think it's
$300.
Yeah, I think it costs $5 to get into or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's the upgrade. You're right. $400 upgrade. $500 upgrade. New license, $600.
Yeah, I actually I don't know. I have my version of Smart is really old, so they might give me something. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Oh yeah, Smart version 7 DI. And what is it? Let me just find out what it's missing, because I want to see if what it's missing is going to be really critical to working, and using it.
Well, it says it has less channels.
Yeah, there's less channels, which I don't really care about. I'm not going to set up multiple microphones. I'm going to be doing, moving a microphone around. And, the systems we do, I generally don't need to set up more than one mic. I don't mind moving it around.
And you might get more mics in the future, but then you can upgrade to a different license, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'll probably go with DI. There was one other thing I didn't do, though. What was it? It's not just multi-channel. It's
maybe it only runs
transfer
on
function.
the interface. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what?
Maybe it only runs on their audio interface. I'm not sure.
No, I think it'll run on anything. I mean, there's. I think the only advantage to their audio interface, I think you can remote control the preamp or something like that, but I'm not exactly sure. There was one other feature. I'll find it, and I'll shoot you a message on Slack just to see if it's a critical thing that I should have, and actually just stick with the full version. Okay.
So Andy, I was going to say one thing about the math, which is that I've noticed recently that friends of mine who teach something or who are instructors or what I'm thinking is that I have a couple of friends who are personal trainers who have a lot of problems in their own body. And so it turns out that they got into this personal training, physical and nutrition because they had a lot of challenges themselves that they really wanted to figure out.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the same way with me and this course is that this is some of the hardest stuff for me. And the math is difficult for me. And so I'm always trying to figure out the minimum I actually need to memorize, force into my brain, or what's a simplified version, or how can I get around this so that I'll be able to actually remember this and use it in the field. And so I'm completely sympathetic to anyone that's sort of afraid of the math. So
yeah, I'm actually not afraid of it. Actually, I should it's just something that I've used so little over my lifetime. But for example, I remember I was having trouble in school with math at one point in junior high, and I got a little tutoring, and I think it was algebra. And I actually began to like it. I didn't like it enough to really get whole hog into it, but I didn't dismiss it. I wasn't fearful of it after that point. It's, that's all it is. And actually it's kind of cool. Some of the math involved in audio, certainly around geometry and physics and interaction with materials and all that kind of stuff is interesting.
Sure.
So I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I'm not afraid of it, but I definitely need to, bone up on it.
I'm just saying that I'm on board with that. And cool. I want to make it simple. And so your suggestion about combining some of those things into a document. So here's what I'm thinking. I was thinking of making sort of a business card size collection of all of the different, pieces of math or some important pieces of information that you could carry with you. It seems like that would be helpful. But also just another thing you had suggested, I think, either an Excel table or some reference piece of paper or document that sort of combines everything, because I realized that in the first pilot, everything was sort of spread out in the different lessons. So if I can say, you know what, if you forget where that is, it's all on this one page and you can find it there.
Yeah, it's just like your process for evaluating, where you're going to put speakers and how you're going to tune your system. And I could see that there's, for some people, the math piece is not going to be an issue. But it's kind of you get to that point where you're like, okay, the math is an issue. Oh, and it's a step in the process. And I think that's kind of where you're going with this, of the overall process.
Yeah.
And I think that would help. And then, after a couple of times, people like me will get it. And then we won't have to even think about the math part the next time we use the process. So
Well,
I love the business card idea. That's a good, having a little cheat sheet. That's good. And then maybe, once it's on paper, it's kind of a neat thing too, because then you can go say, well, maybe there's an app for this, because there usually is. And that way, if you're in the field and you're like, how do I do that equation? And then you can you have it, it's in your phone.
It's a good idea.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. But thanks for addressing that. I really appreciate it.
Sure. And, let me know, once I actually put that out, let me know if it's what you had in your imagination.
Will do.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, Mark. So, Mark, we're just hanging out, seeing if anyone has any questions about the next pilot for Pro Audio Workshop Seeing Sound. The 2 guys who are here already, Andrew and Andy, actually already took it. And so we're just talking about system tuning and ideas for the next pilot. So did you have any questions about it? Or did you want to see what questions other people had? What's going on with you?
To be honest, I'm at my uni now. I was some time to kill till about 10, going to the studio then, but I saw the email come through, thought it's open, I'll eavesdrop and see what else people have got to hear, what people got to say. I'm interested in system tuning. It's not something I have a lot of experience with, so I'm just trying to learn anything I can do, although without using Smart, because I've only been to one gig where I was shadowing someone else who was doing Smart, and I thought it was a very overly long and complicated process when you could just
Okay.
So I just thought I'd come have an eavesdrop and see what people would have to say on system tuning, because I've not got any.
Well, so what kind of events are you working on, or do you have experience with that you think you might need help with?
Pub gigs.
Okay. Like how big is a pub for you?
Okay.
Like how many people are going to be there?
Okay. About 100 to 300, maximum 300. Okay.
That's a pretty big pub.
No,
I hear people say pub, I'm imagining like a long, skinny bar, and maybe there's like a little stage at the end. But you mean like there's maybe a proper stage and maybe a proper sound system?
No, there's never a proper sound system. It's I'm talking about gigs where I'm like bringing my own gear in. So in that case, it's.
So this is a bar where they're clearing out some space for a band.
But yeah,
got it. Okay, and you are thinking like, how do I set this up properly in this like sort of weird room and make it work so that it can be heard over drunk people?
Yeah.
Sure. Cool. Well, that is pretty much what this course is for. I find that it's most helpful for people who have the opportunity to move their speakers, because we talk a lot about where to put speakers, how to aim them, and kind of the physics of sound. It's I think it's probably a little bit less valuable for people who work in a place where the sound system is fixed, and so they can't really move anything except maybe the monitors. So it's still good if you can like add some speakers, or like the best spot for the monitors, or like the band in relationship to the main speakers. But anyway, yeah, that's what I think is kind of valuable for. But I don't know, for the sake of this conversation, can you think of like the last time you were working on a pub gig? Like what were some of the challenges that came up that you feel like you wish you had known more about, or at least understood what was happening?
The last pub gig I worked was yesterday.
Okay.
So just trying to make. I don't know how to describe it.
Well, how did you think it turned out? Did you think it sounded well, or sounded good? Sorry.
I thought it sounded good. Yeah, I was just.
You think it could have been better?
It was fine for me. It was just I was wondering, like in future, how to deal with like the various reflections that you can get, or alternatively lack thereof.
Yeah.
In some because of the different varying acoustics of different pubs, different rooms,
Sure.
etc.
So even if you have just a couple of speakers, you're thinking like, there's still 50 different ways I could put these 2 speakers in here and aim them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although mine's very much just straight end on in front of the band.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
And kind of like what's happening there and what's happening with the band. I worked a similar event earlier this week. Wait, what's today? Monday. Last week. And they just had 2 speakers, and I wish they would have set it up a little bit differently, especially in difficult rooms, difficult spaces. It's funny because it's almost like the more difficult the space and the less equipment you have, the more careful you have to be with how the system is set up. So if you are in a very reflective room with a lot of ambient noise and you just have 2 speakers, then you almost have to be more careful, because you're like, how do I make sure that I put sound where the people are and not where they're not, not like onto walls. The bartenders don't need to hear the sound, but the band does. And these people here will want to, maybe not these people over here, stuff like that. Well, what else can I tell you? I'm trying to think back to when I was doing more of those size of events, or if we had someone else. I guess we had a couple people in the last pilot who had their own systems and were potentially doing those size of events. And I think a lot of their questions were around like where to put their subs. So they're trying to decide if they should put their subs like on a left and right stack, or in the center, or in the back. And they were trying to figure out if they should take their 2 speakers on sticks and like put them as wide as possible and then aim them in, or if they should put them like as close as possible and then aim them out. And so what we do in the course is instead of me just trying to say like everything that's good or bad about that, we take a look at those, and we take a look at a lot of simulations. So I use this prediction software called MapXT from Meyer Sound, and you can put speakers in the space and kind of take a look at what if you had sort of like X-ray goggles for sound, and you could see the sound in the space at over a certain frequency range, usually like an octave around a certain frequency. Then you could see how those 2 speakers are interacting. It's not really great for seeing kind of how they interact with walls in a space or the floor, but it's great for looking at how they interact with each other. So that's what we do, is we kind of like look at a lot of these scenarios and talk about the pros and cons of each one, because unless you can show me like a design of your space and some photos and like even maybe like a recording and you can get interactions that you had, this person said it was good, that person said it was bad. Unless you can give all of that information, it's really hard to make an improvement or to give some advice. But we can take a look at a lot of like general common setups, say some things about those, so that the next time you're in that position, you can say, okay, we talked about that, we saw that, and then kind of you have like these templates in your mind that then you can like use for your next setup.
One question I do have, I didn't get a chance to ask it to my live sound tutor, although, and the situation has since passed, but there's a question on live recording and the placement of ambient microphones. So, I mean, I've got videos of it online. If you go into YouTube and search for the Maple Clouds. So,
what's that?
Sorry?
What's the Maple Clouds?
The Maple Clouds is a duo that I'm in. So I play guitar in it and my other half sings. So we've done about 30 videos of that performance. So we've got it filmed and everything. And we took a feed from the desk. So there were 3 channels that are being used on a normal setup: guitar, vocal. On the desk in question, I had 4 buses. You can send the app of the bus. So I sent my guitar to one bus, my vocal to another bus, her vocal to bus 3, And then I had about 300 microphones. I placed them all to the pulse, which was ambient. So and also we sent the desks, the reverb unit, sent that also into these recording software. Okay. So there was the room to make any necessary adjustments. If you have a brief look on said video, in between both performers, you've got a thin pencil condenser, AKG C1000S, pointing straight towards the crowd. And I also, what's out of shot is if you're looking at both performers a few feet to the right, about 6 feet to the right. There's a pair of Samsung CO2 condensers. They're in a coincident pair to try and capture like fuller space. I was wondering if you could briefly listen and give ideas on potential improvements or your approach to live recording and the placement of our microphones in that space. We played that place often. It's often very reflective. So I was wondering about your considerations for, as well as placement of where we're at.
Sure. Yeah. Tell me a live recording or maybe another video to compare it to that you like a lot, that you think has a great sound, a great mix.
Okay.
I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah. The only thing that I can think of was another video that I told my videographers I want this to follow this as a reference, although the reference is just a camera stuck in front of the acts in an outdoor space. So it's not along the same lines as the previous saying, if you understand what I mean.
Okay. And what are you doing with those audience mics? Are you mixing them in during the song or just in between the songs?
They're in during the songs.
Okay. Let's see. Otherwise, so Andy works in broadcast. So maybe let's watch some of this video, and then we'll ask Andy if he uses audience mics in broadcast.
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to give it a listen. Yeah.
All right. So let's see. Share computer sound, and then I'll do.
Let me get some headphones on here because.
Get your headphones on.
Yeah.
All right. Mark, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Can you see the video?
Mm-hmm.
And if I play this, do you hear the sound? You hear the sound of the video?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So Andrew's gonna get his headphones, and we're gonna diagnose the shit out of this video.
If I plug these headphones in, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I guess not.
No, I can hear you. Andy, I can hear you. Andy, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you anymore.
I can hear you.
I unplugged.
No, I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. I can hear you. All right, let me plug this back in then. Go ahead.
All right, here we go. Here's a video. I'm going to mute everyone.
Secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. You don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fourth, and the major lift, the barefoot kick, the posing hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof. Her beauty and the moonlight overthrew the eyes. She tied you to a kitchen chair. She broke your throat and she cut your hair.
All right, Andy, what do you think so far?
Okay. I can't hear you
Oh,
either.
you can't hear me. Here, I'll type it
Let me
in.
unplug this.
What do you think so far? Oh, you can't hear the recording? Andy, can you hear me now? Technology fail. I heard it. Yep.
Why
Mark
am I
heard
hearing
it.
this?
Andrew, Mark. Okay. Mark. Andy, can you hear me? Did we lose you? Andy, we can hear you. Okay, so while Andy is getting back up, I will tell you, Mark, that that sounded great to me. The first thing I thought when I saw the video is, why?
You can hear me, but I can't hear you.
That's
So
okay.
something happened. Something broke here. I still can't hear you either.
Okay, I'm going to mute you for a second, Andy. Here we go. Andy, I can hear you. I'm going to mute you for a second. Okay. So the first thing I thought when I saw the video is, why isn't Mark smiling? He looks angry. But that aside, the sound sounds good, and the only thing I would say is, from my experience of mixing live recordings that I've done, is that when I listen back, I always want more of the room sounds. So just from a level perspective, I would love to hear more of those audience mics that you have in there, Mark. And so if you do another recording in the future, I would love to hear those mixed up. I mean, up in the mix.
Higher in the mix, yeah.
Yeah, that would give me, I think, more sense of like being in the room and having the experience that you're having. Because right now it sounds like it's mostly from
dry.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, the sounds are good, but I think it would be more fun to hear it in the space.
Yeah, it was mixed externally. The videographer, he recorded it onto Logic through his system. I have no recording system. So he mixed it externally, and that's just what he had sent me.
Okay,
cool. Yeah. So just in future, try and be a bit more, not hands-on, but just have more involvement and try to, okay.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. So the placement that you had, tell me again the placement. Are they actually, it looked like in the video they're actually pointing at the speakers.
There was the one that you saw in the video, and that was pointing at, so if you get to...
This one right here on the left?
That's a camera. I apologize for the confusion. The one in the middle between myself and...
Oh, right here. Okay.
That's the C1000S pointed at the audience, and the other one is at a shot. It's about 6 feet on the right away the right speaker.
Okay.
So that's placed near a window in a coincident pair.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds fine. So that's probably what I would have done. Just definitely using some of them to get just reflections and the sound of the room. I worked with a guy, I don't do this, but another thing you might experiment with is that I worked with a guy who would set up his room mics. I guess they're not audience mics necessarily anymore, but he would set, when he did live recordings, he would take direct, but then he would also set up some and actually point them at the sound system to get the sound of the sound system in the room, which, when you think about it, is also the experience. If you're a person standing there in the room, you're hearing the sound system and the room. And so then you have the option then to put more of that in if you want to kind of hear what your experience was like of hearing the sound system in the room and not just the...
what I'm sending from the desk to the...
Yeah. And so if you have two pairs like that, that might be, or at least you said you have a pair and then one other.
Yeah, I had it as a coincident pair to save on cable runs and trip hazards. Because if I had it as a space pair, then there's more chance for audience to actually...
Sure.
So with the XY, it did there was partial capture of the right speaker.
Okay.
I've got an element of that. That's just but I'll try a bit more to get a bit more of a spaced approach. Just gaffer the area off, I guess, and have it pointing straight out. Okay, I'll try that.
Okay, Andy, can you hear us now? Okay, so I'm going to unmute you, and now can we hear you?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I can hear you. I totally missed everything, so I apologize. It's just I heard like 5 seconds of the recording, and then it went away. So next time I'll just reconnect and I'll get back. Anyway.
Well, so what we said while you were gone is that when I listened to it, I actually didn't hear that much of the audience mic, and I was thinking that it was either too low or it was mixed so well that it was just like super clean. But I wanted more of the experience of actually being in the room. So with this broadcast gig that you have, do you have audience mics, and do you want to talk about how you use them?
Yeah, sometimes I do. It's not for music, by the way. It's just to get either some room ambience so that when no one is speaking, you're in a break or something, what people hear on the broadcast is a little bit of room ambience. It feels like they're still connected. The other purpose of it is that when the audience reacts, we want to hear that.
Can I ask what?
And the needs are a little different. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark. You were going
to. For background context, etc. Can I ask why? Can I ask where you work and what your?
Oh, yeah. It's a different situation because these are corporate meetings and things like that. I have done things where I'm in a band, and. No,
I was just curious as to what broadcast things you're on about. Were you working like with?
Yeah, the broadcast stuff I'm doing is largely corporate meetings, so they're within the broadcasts go out either to the company itself, or it might be a public broadcast where people can dial in and listen to it. But it's talking heads largely and things like that. I think that, and I do some music mixing, so there are some differences, but there are some things that are also similar. And so one of the things that's similar is that if you're, I usually, the audience mics for a corporate thing, I'll ride them. I won't leave them up all the time unless I can get away with it. If I can get away with it, generally it's 70. I only dial them in to like 30% of the overall volume. If you add it up, like if you think 70% is the direct sound coming off the mics, then the 30%, maybe you've heard that before too. It's kind of a general rule of thumb, but it does apply. It doesn't always apply for every room though, because the more live the room is, usually the less of those room mics you can use, just because you don't want your recording to sound hollow. And maybe you've experienced that as well. The best solution, frankly, is that you can record 4 tracks, or you can look at it this way, you can put your audience mics on separate tracks. Because then later on, you can fix it, you can edit it, you can finesse it. And I think that's generally what people who are recording to sell their recordings, they try and do that, so you'll have enough of a multi-track setup where you can get away with that. I think you're taking 2 feeds off the desk. You have a couple of live mics.
I'm taking about 4 or 5 feet off the desk. So on the desk, we've got 3 channels that I normally use, and then 3 ambient mics. So I've got 4 buses on said desk.
Yeah.
So bus 1, guitar.
Yeah.
Bus 2, my vocal.
Yeah.
Bus 3, her vocal.
Yeah.
Bus 4, the ambient mics, and also my desk has got an effects unit built into it. So I sent that to reverb. The center that is also parallel. Yeah, so I'm sending about 5 different channels into the interface.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's tough.
The idea being then there was room to mix. So say if in the actual thing, it's too loud, alter it. That's the implications. Yeah.
You're recording just stereo?
Sorry?
Or are you doing
No, he's recording the tracks individually.
Yeah, I recorded each track individually.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
That was the idea, so that when they could be taken and mixed individually. So
Sure.
Yeah.
And so the thing with audience mics is that there's two purposes to mics out in the room. There's to get the live feel of the room, which it sounds like you're going for. And then the other thing is to get the audience's reaction.
Yeah.
You're basically pointing mics in opposite directions at that point, because you want to point mics at the audience, away from away from the room, so to speak, to get a picture of the room. So it's hard to have those mics do both. If you want to get good audience sound, and usually the compromise is that you don't point the mics at the audience. You point the mics where you need them for your recording, so the music sounds good.
That's kind of why. I don't know if you already heard how I had my placements. So So my C1000S, AKG C1000S, was between the two performers, pointing directly at the audience, and then so that was the idea being that I could get direct sound of the audience capture. And my coincident pair of Samsung CO2 condensers, they were to the right. They were stage right about a couple of yards away from the right speaker, and they were in a coincident pair. So partial capture was of the partial capture was of the bar area, and they were in front of a window. So the idea being, if there was going to be reflections off the glass, partial capture. So I thought, the way I had placed all three of their mics and then sent them all to that bus was the idea that I could get both of those functions done. Yeah,
the AKG C1000, I mean, it's a cardioid, if I remember right. It's just a standard cardioid. It's tough to get good audience pickup with that. And I'll just say why, because typically, and it doesn't really matter on the size space for this to apply, you want the most directional mics you can get, almost the most directional. In fact, what a lot of engineers use are either hypercardioids or even they'll go to shotgun mics, depending. If shotgun mics work in a big space, and it just keeps some of that energy that's coming off the stage that would hollow out the audience mic sound away from that mic. And you try and put them in the.
So just to get it, what you're saying clear in my head. So if I'm using a cardioid mic, so mics point into that space where the audience is, and say audience is around here, if sound from the two speakers is coming there, that will cancel out or hollow out the sound of audience being audience if I use like a cardioid mic. Right. And if I use a hypercardioid mic, and bearing in mind with the AKG C1000S, it's got an adapter where you can make it hypercardioid. So
it does? Okay. I didn't realize. Maybe I think the wrong mic.
It's no, you think of the same thing. They just it's the next model up.
Okay.
Yeah, the C1000S, it comes with a little, so you can unscrew the capsule. You've got a little plastic adapter which you put on the capsule.
Oh, okay.
So I believe I kept as cardioid. My rationale being I want, because audience is a large thing, I want to keep as much of it. Although I get what you're saying. So the sound of the PA and the sound of the system would cancel out or drown out the audience if I used cardioid.
Yeah, and for your gigs, because you're in pubs and often, you got audience, really close to the stage, I'm sure, that's a time where shotguns don't work in your favor, or a very directional mic works in your favor, because then you're just going to hear those three people that are down front, and they're talking away during your set. You don't want that. So it really depends on the space and where you can get away with putting these mics. I try not to put them near speakers if I can get away with it, In the center is tough though, because often you've got audience down front.
I think that, as I said before, my placement was mainly instead of a space pair, which is what I would have ideally liked, due to the cable runs, risk of people getting hurt, trip hazards, etc. That's why I kept them both together. But at least by having the constant pair, it got a larger space than.
Yeah. Let me, if I could make a suggestion. I know you've got this microphone and you're trying to use it, but if you ever did end up getting, two of these mics, getting lighting stands, which are really lightweight and they get up high, and you put one of those aside and get them up really high, but they could be in the same plane as the stage, so they're not far away from your mixer, and you're not running into cable run issues. That might be a good suggestion, and might work in a lot of your situations, because then you're not. Yeah, they're just lightweight. Like video crews use them.
Right, I'm just going to briefly Google. It's not something I've come across.
If I can find one for you.
That's all right. Lighting stands.
Yeah, look for. I think you just Google lightweight lighting stand. Video lighting stands. You'll find them, and they're probably. I don't know. I actually have a couple, and they come in handy. You have to get an adapter. Well, I don't know. It depends on where you are. Are you in Europe?
Yep.
Yeah, so you might not have to get the adapter for the mic part, but they're designed. Usually, the threads on them are designed to go into a camera, or sometimes there'll be enough of a.
No, that's fine. That's I
can. Usually, there's some way to. You can use clamps or whatever. There's always a workaround. But the nice thing about them is that they're really lightweight and they really get. You can get them to be very tall. You can get them a good 8 feet, sometimes 7 or 8 feet up in the air, and they can something this big. And they weigh, they don't weigh much. They're like a third of the weight of a mic stand. And a tripod. They're a tripod.
So space pair roughly behind or near the speakers, but pointing towards the audience in the center.
I would get them wide and point them. Just sort of point them down at a 45-degree angle into the audience.
All right. And my next time,
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys talked about this, but usually when you go back, I don't know if you do any time alignment. You might need to do some sort of time alignment with any of your mics that are out in the audience to line them up with your direct sound coming off the PA, or from your mixing desk.
Yeah, my recordings, they were recorded by the videographer and they were mixed by him externally, so I didn't have any part in that. I can't comment on whether he did that, although I am aware that's something to bear in mind given how many feet away.
It can, experimenting with that can go a long way sometimes. Anyway.
I've got experience of time alignment in relation to microphone placement. It's just not in that given situation. For example, I have done time alignment on, a close mic guitar amp to.
So you're there.
So I understand how it works.
But it's good. You play with it because it can go a long way sometimes with both the audience mics and any room mics you have. Hey, I wanted to go back to something very early in the conversation, not to do with recording, but
no, that's fine.
It came to mind when you were talking about the situations you get into, and it goes with Nathan. Is that it occurs to me, Nathan, that when even before you get into analyzing a room and all of that, you have to kind of evaluate and prioritize your compromises. Does that make sense? In other words, and you alluded to it, Nathan, which is, where you put speakers, if you can even put speakers where you want to put them. And it seems like you have to go through that mindset of, okay, I can put speakers here and this is what I'm compromising, or I can put speakers here and this is what I'm compromising. And then after you get those choices, then maybe running, analyzer software, prediction software, And then you can kind of try out both scenarios and look at it from that standpoint. I mean, I've been doing it a long time, so I kind of know some of the compromises and the mindset that I go through for different situations. And there's no one rule. And that's why it's really helpful with this class I really like, because a lot of people have different experiences and they've shared their compromises and what they have had to do to get something to sound good. And often the reasoning behind it is really sound. I think the analyzer software kind of takes it, the prediction software takes it a step further. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because it's almost like my first step when I walk into a room. I go, okay, the stage is here. What are my options? And the producer of the event wants me to put speakers here, and I have to have a compelling argument to say they'll work better here. Here's the compromise if I do go with the original plan, and things like that really factor very heavily into the outcome of how your system's going to sound. I mean, really, because I think a lot of times people go in and they're just like, well, I've always done it this way. And I wouldn't think of moving the speakers because I've always done it this way. But having the mindset of coming in and going, you know, there are options and there are compromises and there are benefits to everything really helps. So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there because I think it's like a step in your process, Nathan, that you came up with.
Yeah, you have to be able to know how to talk about it because sound is invisible. And we usually don't have enough time, the kind of events that we're working on, to show up and like try out 3 different sound systems and sit down with the client and say, okay, do you like A, B, or C?
Yeah.
We have to be able to talk about it and say, here's what I think we should do. You know, here are the pros and cons. And then, you know, just like make a decision and commit.
Yeah. Yeah, we've all gotten the thing where, you know, in the drawing, the speakers are behind the stage.
Right.
And you're just like, oh, God, I got to talk to them about that, you know. And it's just, I mean, that's an extreme one. But and there are certainly more subtle ones, too, you know. And
well, I've gotten a lot recently where there's just too many speakers and there's like several speakers that are just half playing into a wall. And I'm like, you know, we can do that a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, the gig, Nathan and I just worked on a gig together where the drawing showed the speakers just blowing across the room at each other.
Oh, right. They were pointing at each other. That was cool.
Yeah. And I looked at the drawing and I kind of went, did they do that last year? I mean, because this is a gig that they've done for, I think, 3 years.
Yeah.
And so I was just checking, you know, because sometimes the client will go, that's the way we've always done it. And then that's another conversation, is how you convince them to go, that's the way you've always done it. There's a better way. And I guess you just have to demonstrate to them. And usually what happens at the end of the day is you make it sound good. And they're like, great, we can stick with that now, you know. But anyway, I think that negotiation and that thought process is so critical. You know, even before you turn on any analyzer software. Anyway.
We have run out of time. Mark, Andy, Andrew, thank you for being here. Mark, if you do another recording or you do a different mix and upload it, let us know. It'd be fun to see if you make any changes. Yeah. And Andrew and Andy, I will see you guys in Seeing Sound.
Yeah, and Mark, post a link to your recordings, and I'll take a closer listen.
I forgot
yeah, when you get a chance, there's a Slack channel. I don't know if you have access to that, or you can even do it in the text here.
Well, if you send it to me, then I can send it to 2 of those guys.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Cheers.
All right. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.